like to welcome you tonight to our, I can't even believe it's November already, but November 2nd, Hendersonville Regional Planning Commission meeting. Glad everybody's here. And we're going to start by noting that all commissioners are present tonight. And I'm going to ask Mr. Coker. Commissioner Coker, would you open us in a word of prayer?
I'd be glad to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So everybody bow their heads, please. Dear Holy Father, thank you for this day, and thank you for everything that you've blessed us with, and thank you for the opportunity to gather in this city, and thank you for the opportunity to voice our concerns and give our opinions on the future growth of the city. And just we ask that you bless everybody that's here and everybody that's part of this decision-making process, and we give this all to you in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We start tonight by public hearings, request by Gade Properties to approve a preliminary development plan for Nearwater Place and to rezone the property from General Commercial Plan Development, GCPD, to Multifamily Residential Plan Development, MFRPD. The request also includes an amendment to the general framework map of the Hendersonville Land Use and Transportation Plan to change the character area designation of the property from suburban center to suburban living. And the property is located on the west of, to the west of Rockland Road and on the north side of West Main Street as identified on Sumner County Tax Map 160, parcel 050.01. And we have one person signed up for this hearing tonight. So Mr. Richard Markham, if you'll come, and the podium's right there. If you will identify yourself, and we'll be glad to hear your comments.
Thank you for your time today.
Just be clear, are you here for the Nearwater one?
I'm here for the Stonecutter Capital Management request.
We're going to put you on that list. I think you signed up for the wrong hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
So that's okay. Very good. Okay, we just wanted to make sure. So, but don't go far away. Having no other citizens signed up for that particular hearing, we'll declare that one closed. The next hearing is a request by Stonecutter Capital Management, LLC, to rezone 47.2 acres from industrial to industrial plan development and to approve a comprehensive development plan for Music City Studios to govern said property. The property is located west of Freehill Road on the north side of Forester Street Road as identified on Sumner County Tax Map 160, parcels 160.033.07, 033.08, 042.00, 043.00, and 045.01. And now, Mr. Markham, if you'll come, and we'll be happy to hear from you. If you introduce yourself, please.
Get a little more exercise tonight.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I live at 301 Forest Retreat Road. So this request really is going to be my next door neighbor. Last week I came in, talked to the folks planning, and they were nice enough to show me the design, point out that there's a 50-foot easement between my property line and a retaining wall. And that's when I started to get a little concerned. I have multiple places in my lawn on that side of the property where the ridge bedrock comes right up through the lawn. So if they're putting a retaining wall 50 feet away from my property line, they're going to be blasting, in all probability, within 70 feet of my in-ground pool and in fact, less than 60 feet from a retaining wall and a couple outbuildings on my property. So my concern is who is going to be monitoring the seismic activity? How will I be protected so that I don't suddenly find the pool's empty because the in-ground pipes broke? Now, that things you would probably expect. Hopefully I won't have to get my own recording seismographs and monitor them. I would hope that they could come out and do a survey. Actually, I'd hope they'd be drilling rather than blasting that close to my house. because the other side of the pool is the house itself. And I just wanted to read that into the notes so that folks were aware they're planning to do some major work in earth removal where it's mostly rock and bedrock, very close to existing buildings. So thanks for the time, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Markham, and we'll try to get you some answers on that when we come to that part of the meeting. We'll ask those questions for you and see if we can't get some answers. Having no other participants for that hearing, I'm going to declare that one closed. The next hearing we have tonight is a request by WFC Durham Holdings, LLC, to annex and rezone 6.93 acres to mixed residential plan development, MXCPD, as included in the Approval Durham Farms Development Plan. This request also includes an amendment to the general framework map of the Hendersonville Land Use and Transportation Plan to change the character area designation of the property to mixed-use neighborhood. And this property is located west of Longview Drive on the south side of Long Hollow Pike as identified on Sumner County Tax Map 123, parcels 084.00 and 084.02. And there was nobody signed up for that hearing, so we're going to declare that hearing closed.
Sir, we tried to online and weren't able to.
Oh, okay. Well, we can do that. We've got 3 of you? 4?
Yep, 3.
Okay, that'll be fine.
We don't have ability to do any online. But
Okay,
that would-
we didn't have the ability, that's why it didn't, but we're going to hear from you anyway. Okay, so if you would, if you'll just introduce yourself, and we'll get your name and address and put it on the minutes. Ms. Berry will do that. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Just a second, let me get the right one here.
Got it?
Yes.
All right, go ahead. If you'll just introduce yourself.
I'm Stan Jones. I'm a resident at 1024 Heathrow Drive, Hendersonville, and the
1024 E,
1024 Heathrow,
Heathrow. Yeah.
like the airport,
Yeah.
I got you.
in Somerset Downs. And I serve as Secretary and Treasurer on the Homeowners Association. First of all, we'd like to welcome the city of Hendersonville looking across the street from our neighborhood and as far as the annexation, and look forward to that as far as being good neighbors. And one of the concerns that we share amongst us and the other homeowners in the neighborhood, when we saw the language of the mixed residential and such for that zoning area, the fear was that that would potentially turn into more development among that 6 acres beyond just the roadway. I know there's some elevation issues in there. I'm curious what the developers' plans are as far as going through that elevation, because it is immediately off Long Hollow Pike and will probably take up some blasting. We can be sympathetic with the blasting that I think we've already had some sustained issues from the blasting further into the development in our neighborhood, so that is of some concern. I hope that the impact is minimal environmentally and for the sake of we certainly hope there's no further construction, but that it is just a roadway. But we already face a huge problem with our neighborhood downstream going across Long Hollow Pike with water, with storm water. And I think that's only going to be exacerbated by what I see as the 4-lane road coming out of the development down to Long Hollow Pike. I hope there's some exceptional effort to mitigate that. But our biggest concern was we saw that it was 6 acres, and we were fearful that it would become something somewhat retail or something opportunistic, and we hope that it is just for the sake of the roadway. But thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. You'll just say, introduce yourself. So
My name is Stephen Walmer, 1076 Dorset Drive, Hendersonville. I am the Homeowners Association President for Somerset Downs. And I'll just say this with regard to what Stan said. I echo all of his sentiments, but I want to add that part of what I've seen in some of the languages, I've heard a stop sign. Actually, I've heard a stop light, but in the paperwork that I've seen, it says a stop sign. And if any of you kind of have been around for a while, you've seen the development of Durham Farms. I'll just be very honest and transparent. I'm not a fan of what the developer's done. I'm not going to disparage anybody that lives there, but I just don't like it. But I think it's wrong what the developer has done there with regard to the traffic that it's added to the community without taking into consideration the infrastructure that supports the roads coming in and out. So anybody that drives New Shackle Island or drives Drake's Creek knows that, there are way too many cars to support that. Let's talk about Stop 30 Road and then the Anderson and Drake's Creek intersection, the little tiny bridge. So I would say that probably my biggest concern here is that we don't just take someone's word for what they're going to do, but that we actually get them to write it down in commitment. And if they don't follow through with those commitments, that we pursue legal action to ensure that a developer who is not from the area has a little bit of care and concern for us that do live here and are left, unfortunately, with the consequences of their greed. So that's all. Thank you.
Would you spell your last name for?
Sure. Walmer.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. Please, sir.
Thank you for your time. My name is Darren Peterson. I am a resident of 2097 Hockwell Circle, that is in Somerset Downs. I am part of the 2097 Hockwell Circle.
Hockwell, okay, thank you.
Somerset, it's in, I guess I should say Hendersonville, 37075, Somerset Downs community. Echoing what my fellow board members have said prior, if I can just appeal to what brought me to this community. I came from Lexington, Kentucky in 2019. My wife and I ended up settling where we did in Somerset Downs based upon the country atmosphere that was in that community. I am significantly worried about what we are doing, bringing all of the new development closer to us. That's what draws us to this community. I think expansion's good to a certain extent, but we need to do it the right way to make sure that everybody's accountable for what they do. And to echo what our president said, what our treasurer said, is that we just need to make sure we understand what's going to happen before it happens. And that is what I'm up here to suggest. I like the country. I want to see the country. If we have a buffer, 100 yards, 200 yards, whatever it may be between the two, fine. All for expansion, but let's make sure we have the infrastructure to do it, and let's also make sure that we keep it the way that it is for the people that live here right now.
Thank you very much.
What was that last name? Is it Stevens?
Excuse, what was your last name one more time?
Peterson.
Peterson.
P-E-R-S-O-N.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
I would be Mrs. Peterson. My first name is Marisa, M-A-R-I-S-A.
My better half.
Please.
As he said, we moved to Hendersonville from Kentucky 2.5 years ago. I drove from Franklin through Nashville up to Hendersonville, looked for about a year. I fell in love with Long Hollow. I think the typography is gorgeous. I love the country look. I've lived in big cities most of my life, and I was like, look at all this beauty all around me. I don't want to see mixed residential ruin that beautiful land. I don't know how many, I know that I'm a newbie too, but I just think it's gorgeous. And I think development's good, and that's what happens, it's life. But how much land has already been developed by Durham Farms? I think you need to remember just looking around and taking that fresh breath of air when you come home from the hustle and bustle of every day. That's priceless. I moved there for a reason. I love the charm. I love just the aesthetics. I love what God created, all the beauty around me. I don't care to see possible mixed residential across from my neighborhood. I love that land. I think it's beautiful and developed. And I think it's my responsibility to come here today and remind everybody about that. I mean, development's fine, but what's 6 point more acres of just, hasn't he done enough? Hasn't enough land been developed? What about just the nature that needs to be left and preserved for the beauty of Hendersonville? That's why I moved here. So I just would like that to be taken into huge consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. There are no other citizens signed up for that hearing, so now we'll declare that hearing closed. The next hearing we have is a request by Jared Crane to rezone 0.89 acres to heavy commercial. The property is located at 1200 Avondale, east of Saundersville Road, and on the south side of Avondale, as identified Sumner County Tax Map 146, parcel 048.00. And there's nobody signed up for that particular public hearing. We'll declare that one closed. Okay.
Oh, we can add him.
We would be happy to do that. If you could just step up to the microphone, and we will allow you to do that. If you just state your name and where you live.
Yes, my name is Patrick Bell, B-E-L-L. I'm at, my family home is at 1250 Avondale Road, just above the acreage that's in discussion. Possible concern would be that with the heavy commercial of that zoning would increase. Well, there is a residency in on down. It's considered county, but it's still a small community there. And with this heavy commercial zoning, it would promote more traffic. It's already a deterioration of the roads that divides county and Hendersonville as far as the industrial park area. The glass plant that's located across the street from this properties, they've already torn a big section of the road, and that's been discussed, but there's been no reconciling of it, and to me it would be, I don't think it would be a good idea for that to go heavy commercial. That's just,
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
yes.
Having no other citizens signed up for that one, we will declare that hearing closed as well. Are there any commissioners desiring requests for information and assistance? Hearing none. But about additions to the agenda? Hearing none. We move to the minutes of October 5, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Move to accept.
Mr. Altizer makes the motion. Who seconds? Mr. Hasty makes the second. And, okay, yeah. And any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Go ahead and call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
Yes.
Hardwick, Hardcastle, Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire, Peterson, Silkwood,
Abstain.
Stringfellow, and Jenkins.
Yes.
All right, that's 6.
Okay. All right, we'll move on now to the development plans. And the first one we have is Music City Studios, and Mr. Witten, if you could lead us through this.
Thank you. The staff report is fairly complex. There's a lot of detail in it. I won't go blow by blow through all of that. I'll just give you kind of the high points. And then if you've got any questions about any of the sections within that report, feel free to ask me. We can get to more detail on those. So the applicant is Music City Studios. They do film and TV and audio production. Their site is 46.5 acres at the east end of Molly Walton and Freehill Business Park. The property is zoned, the bulk of the property is zoned industrial. The easternmost lot is zoned SR2, single family residential. The land use plan there, after the zoning, if you can go to the next one. Yeah, the land use plan shows all of this area within the employment center, which industrial zoning is compatible with employment center character area. The thoroughfare plan that's in our land use and transportation plan calls for the extension of Molly Walton east to Forest Retreat, which Music City Center is proposing to do that extension along their portion of their property. TDOT is planning to add in the future an interchange to the 386 and Forest Retreat intersection, which when that's built out will provide a direct connection from 386 to Freehill Business Park. They are requesting some waivers, variances. The first of those, the buffer requirement. If you look at page 8, there, the graph, the green line at the top, there's a required 30-foot buffer in between the east side of Building C and the SR2 zoned property to the east of it. They are requesting that buffer be less than 30 feet. It starts at 30 feet at the very top of the green line and then reduces to about 5 feet at the south of that green line. The future land use plan for that adjacent SR2 zone property calls for it to be suburban center, which is commercial retail uses. So it would not be unreasonable to expect when the interchange gets built that there would probably be some effort to convert that to commercial and retail. The present activity on that site, it used to be a single-family home. I don't think it's single-family anymore. There's quite a bit of land disturbance, fill activity, lots of trucks. So some sort of commercial industrial activity going on there presently. So they're asking for that waiver for the 30-foot buffer. They meet all the other buffer requirements. On the building height, industrial zoning allows a maximum of 45 feet. Building C, which is on the north side of Molly Walton, is proposed to be 90 feet tall. And then Building A South, on the south side of Molly Walton, is proposed to be 60 feet tall. The other two buildings will be under the required 45 feet. There is an additional height restriction that applies adjacent to residential zoning. It's just kind of a complicated, complex formula that basically restricts building height as you get close to the edge of a residentially zoned property. They're asking for a waiver there as well. On building materials, the three buildings on the south side of Molly Walton, those three buildings will be Tiltup Concrete panels on all sides of the buildings with brick pilasters and columns at regular intervals along those facades. And then Building C on the north side of Molly Walton, the 90-foot tall building that will have tilt-up concrete panels on the lower parts of that 90 feet, and then the upper kind of 2/3 of that will be metal panels. Industrial zoning allows tilt-up concrete and metal on the sides and rears of industrial buildings so long as they're screened from the street. But tilt-up concrete and metal are not preferred materials on the fronts of buildings facing a street. So they're requesting a waiver there. In addition, the Building C, the 90-foot building, they're proposing a series of crisscrossing sort of light bands. So the ordinance allows a single band of LED or neon lighting around the perimeter of a building. This is a little different though. Again, it's just crisscrossing across that, the metal panels. I believe it's grooves that are cut into the metal and then some sort of light illumination inserted into those grooves. So they're asking for that application. So that hits the highlights, all of the waivers that they're requesting. If you've got any questions about anything in particular, I or the applicant can answer those.
Yeah, I think it would be good for the applicant to come and introduce themselves. And Jim, you representing them? Okay. And while you're kind of making your presentation, if you might answer some of the concerns that Mr. Markham had with the relation to blasting and that kind of thing. Just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Jim Harrison, CSDG. I'm the project engineer here with the team tonight, and here tonight we have Russell Riebling as well, who I'm going to ask to get up and say a few things about what we're doing and what the use is on the site. And then the architect is here as well, Tyler Jacobsen. We really want to thank staff for helping us to work through these comments. This is a big campus. It's a great project. We're really excited about being involved in it. Some of the specific things that Timothy outlined, like the taller building is on the northernmost side of the site where it's not really adjacent to any kind of residential uses. We did with, I believe it was Mr. Markham that came up, we did set aside extra buffer space along that side towards his house to preserve existing trees. We will be pre-splitting the rock that's over in that area, so the blast will be very contained. They will be required to meet state law and do seismic testing and also do a pre-survey and a post-survey per all those requirements, and we'll meet all those requirements that he expressed earlier.
I'm sure, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Yeah, you're
Mr. Harrison, but will you communicate with Mr. Markham on that?
Yes,
So-
yes, we will.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we really, that parcel got added kind of late in the process, and when we added that parcel, we looked very closely at his property, at the pool and the house and everything, and we wanted to make sure we were setting aside a really good quality area to preserve those trees as well and provide some extra space. So we want to make sure we're doing that as part of this project. So Timothy did a great job of going through the slides. There's really 4 buildings on this site. They all have a lot of connectivity with drives, walkable facilities. They will have a mixture of parking and different equipment trucks that come in, time in, time out when they're doing their operations on the facility. What is really exciting about this project is it brings just a unique use to the city. It's a amazing use compared to what we think is going to happen up on the northeast corner with kind of more of a commercial area that Timothy mentioned. We know with the bypass that Forest Retreat Interchange is underway, is getting ready it's getting into design at this phase, so we know that's getting closer, so we're grateful for that. One thing that was not mentioned in the report, and I just want to mention it, and Sarah may want to add to this, we got an email kind of later this afternoon talking about the traffic. Neil Schaefer has looked at the traffic. They have asked us to look at restriping the lanes as they come out on Free Hill Road out to Main Street as an interim measure. Very, very willing to do that. One of the things that's challenging about a use like this is you do your best job to estimate how many employees are going to be there, when they're going to be there. But as this campus has a lot of creative folks on it, we know that their times are going to be very different from what we normally see with AM, PM times. So what we would like to do with that traffic report, and we've got a lot of time, we've got a site plan that's coming up next and all kinds of other things. We would like to do traffic counts after that interim approach to just identify and really get specific about what that end result is and kind of fill in and do that. And we'll commit to do that as we go through the process. And we, of course, will work with staff through that whole process. We want to make sure that there's adequate traffic capacity on all this project. We also have water quality mixed throughout the campus along the existing stream that runs through the middle of the campus that we're preserving. We will have detention. The city, quite frankly, has been very forward thinking over the years to provide a detention pond that was created as part of Free Hill Industrial Park. We'll be utilizing that. We actually did a couple of things in the Industrial Development Board a couple of years ago to upgrade that. We had a little bit of a problem with beavers who were chopping down trees and clogging up outlets, so we had to take care of that. That happened a couple of years ago prior to this project, but we just really wanted to be here to answer questions and thank staff for working through this project on us. And before I end, I'll be up here available for questions, but I'd like for Russ to just say a few things about the project. Thank you.
Yes, if you would just introduce yourself and,
Hey, good afternoon or evening, everyone. Thanks. I'm Russell Riebling. I'm with the Music City Studios team. So I thought it'd be important to give a little context about the size of this. Obviously, it's a little bit larger in scale.
give us a little biography
Yeah.
of what it is. Timothy
Exactly.
gave us kind of an overview, but give us a little bit more in depth about what you do and
Yeah.
specifically why you need a 90-foot ceiling.
So specifically in terms of what's going on with the uses and sources within that, as Jim mentioned, this is a creative campus. It's really blurring the lines of film, music, and television, something that hasn't been done in the past. And with Hendersonville's rich creative history, especially in music tradition, felt this location would be perfect for really kind of bringing up the 21st century and really bringing in technology that hasn't been seen before. And all of it's done inside of the campus itself. It's not done in the exterior, it's done in the interior. And one of the reasons that 90-foot ask is being made is because that's the size of the production studios that will be done in there. We're talking about the U2s of the world, the largest touring acts that need to be using their rigging from there. But it's all done in self-contained anymore. And with the technologies being brought in and with the skills with our team here, with Jim and the architecture team, it's not going to be any leakage with LED or any sound. It's going to be self-contained, and the excitement within there and what's going to be done from the economic development side, looking at almost 800 jobs are going to be created over the next 5 years. Really excited to bring that to Hendersonville. So, David, I'm happy to answer any more questions from you or the commission to talk a little bit more about it.
We really appreciate that. I'm sure some other commissioners will have questions on the variances. I look at those variances and I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but some of these variances on materials might have to do with soundproofing and that kind of thing for the nature of what you do. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, that's.
Hi, I'm Tyler Jacobsen with the architecture firm Orca Winslow on this. So yes, with this project type, there's a lot of acoustics that's going to be happening with this, and Tiltup Concrete. While it is both an efficient material in terms of speed of construction and structure, but it is also a sound blocking device. So we'll be utilizing that on all of these facilities since there's going to be a lot of noise associated with all of these. And this will just be to contain it, both outside sounds coming in and the inside sounds going out. So, yes.
Okay, yeah, that answers the question. I figured that was part of the reason why.
And to add on to that, the Tiltup Concrete, it is concrete, but we are utilizing it in such a way that we're trying to get it to be as aesthetically pleasing as possible. You saw there's a lot of diagonal lines and reveals that are utilized to try and cut down the scale, as well as the utilization of brick and other materials to cut down that.
Okay. At this point, any questions from the commissioners to either Mr. Whitten or Mr. Harrison or any of the team? Okay, Mr. Coker.
I've just got a question for either Timothy or Jim, whoever wants to take this one, but just want to make sure I'm clear. On the proposed extension of Molly Walton Drive, on the map that you gave us, the mock-up that you gave us, it looks like it's connecting into Township Drive. Is it truly doing that, or is it stopping at Forest Retreat?
It's stopping at Forest Retreat.
Okay.
And we're not extending it as part of this. We're extending it almost to Forest Retreat. It will stop. It's roughly about 500 feet short of Forest Retreat. And I think that's, when we talked to the planning staff, we felt like that was probably a good thing for right now, because we don't have full definition on what's going to happen at the interchange, and we need to see more specifics on that as it happens. But I think it gives us the flexibility to finish out the road and that connection at a future date when we know more about what's going to be around it.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
There's a second road going out on Forester Street. You addressed the first one going out. Yeah. The second road going out to Forester Street.
That's an emergency access drive, and that'll be gated. That's so we can, I didn't mention that, thank you for calling our attention to that. We coordinated with the fire marshal, and they wanted that additional emergency access gate with a gate so that they could get redundant access to the buildings in a more efficient manner. But we know we don't want to bring normal traffic out at that location on Forest Retreat.
Thank you. Ms. Longmire, please.
I'm the one that always questions variances. It's when you
Yes, ma'am.
kind of set something up when you vary it. So why do you feel that you need to use this material and ask for a variance as opposed to going with what is already approved for that type of?
Tyler, I'm going to let the architect come up and answer that, because I get in trouble when I talk about building materials.
So can you clarify which material you're
The
asking?
concrete board.
The concrete. Similar to what I mentioned before, concrete is a very good sound absorber and will allow for the project to be both cost effective and feasible from a cost standpoint, and also keep the sound in. So there are other methods that could theoretically be used, but especially with the cost of materials right now, they are both, from a schedule standpoint and a cost standpoint, not really reasonable for this type of project and the quantities that we're looking at.
But I think I'm correct in this. If not, you can correct me. But right now, you could put the concrete board everywhere except on the front of the building. Is that correct?
So it is the part of the structure. It's something, the Tiltup Concrete is the vertical structure of this project. So it's not feasible right now to switch to something like a steel vertical structure right now, just because of the cost limitations as well as the ineffectiveness of that from an acoustic standpoint. So because that face,
So
the front of the
excuse
street is Tiltup, because it is part of the structure.
So you're saying that when you start the building, you have to know what kind of material you're putting all the way around, and it can't be designed so that you can meet what the requirements of Hendersonville is.
We can, from an aesthetic standpoint, we can look at, for sure, adding stuff onto it. It would be purely from an aesthetic standpoint, though. Our goal is to make sure that this does comply as much as possible, though.
You really didn't answer my question.
Say again?
You really did not
Can you
answer.
repeat the question?
I wanted to know why you felt it was necessary to use a material that required a variance as opposed to one of the materials that is approved. And if I'm correct, the concrete board is allowable on all three sides of a building, but not on the front.
Again, the reasoning for that is acoustics, and if going with another type of structure there would really not be feasible from an acoustic standpoint to keep the sound that is going to be produced in these buildings inside of the buildings. So that's why the structural system was chosen that way from an acoustic standpoint, but also from a speed of construction and a cost feasibility standpoint.
Okay.
I'm happy to
Anything else,
answer.
Ms. Longmire?
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I'm just not got an answer, so it's okay.
I think the applicant's trying to answer, but, you know, I I think that everybody knows how we look at variances around here. We try to take it very seriously. But I also know that we look at the project, and we look at what's going on. And this is in an industrial zone. This is a project that is unlike any other that we've had in Hendersonville, and I've been in town for 30-something years. And on the creative side of it, those that are in the industry of film and especially audio recording and everything, that there are some concerns they have. And of course, you know, being a little that way myself, I was thinking, okay, if this backs up to the bypass, you know, how do you mitigate the bypass sounds, you know? And I was wondering about the materials, and I thought that that was probably the reason why. So while I understand, and we do take a hard line on our variances, but this is such a unique project. You know, this just for me, I'm inclined to say I think we could go with it for this project, but that's just me. And Ms. Longmire.
Yeah, well, let me say, I do think it's a great project. I think it would be a great addition to Hendersonville. But I always look at the variances as if we give you the variances, what's that going to happen down the road? It's kind of like your kid. You're probably not old enough to have kids that are this age, but when you get a teenager and you have rules and you start breaking that rule and making it an exception, you're just opening the door.
Right.
And so that's why I'm questioning. And it seems strange to me that you would design a building with a material on the front of it that you know ahead of time is not allowable. And spend all this time with the structure and the design of how you have to build it to use that material, and you don't even have permission to use it where you're putting it. I mean, on part of it, on the front of it.
Right. Yeah. And I guess what makes this project unique is the sound that you might not find from other facilities, but Jim.
Mr. Harrison.
Sorry. One of the things we knew early on that we need to pay attention to everything that City of Hendersonville requires. Well, we knew this campus was very unique. We knew the shape of the buildings, the use of the buildings are very unique. So we really did sit down with staff, and we want to be here to answer questions, of course, and go through all that. But the bottom line is that the variances that we asked, the 3 or 4 variances that we asked, were very specifically related to the height, to the function of the building, the architectural appearance that consistent with what we needed from a structural standpoint, but also realizing that we were in an industrial park area, and this campus has in my opinion, and this I think was the tone of when we were going through this with staff, was that we understand this campus and this facility will have a positive impact on the overall business park as it exists today. It's going to step up the overall appearance just because of the consistency of the look and the architectural elements that the architect has built into the building, the fact that it's a studio and the fact that it's a use, and all those things just kind of come together to create a logical reason for these variances. So that's the main reason we're asking them, Ms. Longmire. We really have been working diligently with staff to make sure we're getting a good result for the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Longmire. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Good answer. And I would just say, I didn't know you were involved in the project here, but Mr. Harrison has been before this commission countless times over the years, and I don't think there's anybody that knows the city rules better than him over the years. So thank you for your help on that. Any other commissioners have questions?
Yes, I
Mr. Tardick, I'm sorry, yeah.
Is the picture that's showing, is that the 90-foot building, or is that just one of the other 3 buildings?
It is a 90-foot.
It is the 90-foot?
Yes.
So how high are the 3 other buildings going to be? What is the height of those?
So the four buildings, this one, they're perfect. So the building to the very north, that is building C, as we're calling it. That is that 90-foot building. That's where the rehearsal space for the large music acts are going to take place. The building to the very left, to the furthest west, that is what we're calling building B. That is the studios. That is the for all the film production. That will grow up to about 50 feet plus some mechanical units that will be screened on top for a total of about 60 feet. And then the two buildings in the middle and to the furthest south and to the to the east, those are going to be about 35 feet tall and house some recording spaces and sound rehearsal spaces.
So the 50 feet on the building B,
Yes.
you're going to have a concrete panel that will tilt to 50 feet high.
Yes.
And so it's going to look very similar to a lot of the warehouse industrial buildings that are down 840, correct? I assume heavy landscaping along the sides?
Yes, okay, yeah, the distribution centers, similar to
Yes,
the Amazon.
distribution
So the
warehouse
Amazon
centers.
facility, for an example, is a Tiltup Concrete building.
Now, very familiar with Tiltup Concrete.
Mm-hmm.
You will have a static, so it's not just going to be a 50-foot concrete panel.
Absolutely, yeah, we're having reveals throughout the entire facade.
So that will be built into the concrete.
Yes.
And as that panel's tilted up, will they be painted?
Yes, it'll be painted.
What, do we know what colors, light colors, dark colors?
A mixture of both to provide some alternating contrast throughout and to break up the facade.
Okay. We're going to have a steel frame building, concrete tilt up that'll be attached to the steel frames. The 90-foot building. So
Yes.
basically, we're talking about an 8-story office building sitting on that hill.
Right.
And the picture that we saw had architectural features on those panels. So you're talking about metal panels, and the first thing that comes to my mind is I'm going to have a 8-story metal pole barn as I drive into the city. Help me understand why it's not going to be that, because a metal panel does not seem like a good feature.
Metal panel, oftentimes I think can be seen as like a metal siding. Our goal here is to provide more of an architecturally elevated metal panel similar to what you would see in commercial buildings. I'm sure you've seen, car dealerships and some retail areas that utilize metal panels for this. The lightness of the metal panel allows for this tall structure, which cannot feasibly be done with a heavy material, to be utilized.
Because you're 90 feet tall and you're attaching steel frames.
Yes, correct.
Can we go back to that picture that shows that's really blown up? Yes. You see all the architectural designs in that?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Is it going to look like that, or what's that metal panel going to look like? Because I'm really concerned that when you drive into the city of Hendersonville, that you're going to see this big black metal building with no windows that's a 9-story office building.
So we're
and people are going to go, what is that?
It's a little tough to see in this, but we are having some staggered reveals throughout that. They're showing us black lines in there right now, but we do want.
It looks like a floor tile kind of going up there right now. It's what this picture looks like.
Kind of on its side. Yes, exactly. So we're specifying larger panels just to try to break down the mass of the building itself. As well as getting that random staggered pattern to bring a little bit of a texture to the panel itself. We haven't specified exactly the material yet, and we're happy to work with you on exactly what you want to see up there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hardwick. And I would just remind commissioners, and we're going to Ms. Silkwood next, and then Mr. Peterson, that, this is the first part of the process. There's going to be a couple of votes on this tonight. This particular submittal, we'll have a development vote, which will be a recommendation of Board Mayor and Alderman. Then we'll come back a little later in the meeting for the rezone. But so my point is that we'll probably have another opportunity to deal with this at the site plan level. And so we'll be able to hammer this out. But on the other hand, it gives you a good inclination of some of the concerns that the commissioners have right now. And so that's all good. So, Ms. Silkwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I have to disagree a little bit with Commissioner Hardwick. I think, you know, when I take a look at this, I think it looks like a very exciting and distinctive entrance to Hendersonville from 386. I think the key is that it says Music City Studios right there, so it's very clear what exactly this is. One of the biggest concerns, I was completely for this project, but one of the biggest concerns I have tonight is Mr. Markham's concerns about blasting. Although it does sound like you all have made some accommodations and have allayed some of his concerns with the pre-split block and whatnot. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. What is Tiltup Concrete?
Yeah, so Tiltup Concrete,
Can you just go get us a piece of it?
Is that like a concrete panel that's shipped in, or is this made on site?
this is made on site. So they will cast the concrete floor slab so they have a flat surface. And then from there, they will use wood and other sort of formwork to get the frame for these individual panels, which will be in roughly 24-foot widths. They will also lay in strips that will provide the depth and the reveals in there. And we have the option of having some decorative textures be laid into the casting bed as well. From there, concrete is poured. There's a variety of thicknesses. This will be roughly 8 inches thick. And then after it's set and solid, it is craned up. It's tilted up into place. And using metal horizontal supports is braced to create the vertical structure of the building. Yeah, and there's a number of textures and colors that can be applied to concrete. As Chairman said, you know, there's a number of buildings that you can see that utilize Tiltup Concrete. If you go down 840, if you see a lot of the new Amazon buildings, those are Tiltup Concrete. Oftentimes it'll have an aesthetic similar to EFIS or stucco after it's finished.
And I think Building C, you can see that from Vietnam Vets, is that correct?
Yeah, so this face right here is actually going to be the face that you can see for a small clearing through the trees down Vietnam Vets. So that's why we want to make sure that we have that nice big sign as the Welcome to Hendersonville sign, the Music City Studios. And we want to make sure we're utilizing a high quality metal panel material for that.
Okay. And Chairman, I've got a question for the fire department.
Okay.
Will our ladder truck reach a 90-foot building?
Mr. Nolan, would you like to come to the podium and answer that question?
You say that again, sorry?
Yes, I'm concerned about the height on these buildings, and I believe one is 90 feet tall. I probably wouldn't suspect a fire with concrete panels, and I'm sure the building will have a sprinkler system, but in case there is a fire, can our ladder truck reach a roof of a 90-foot building?
No, sir, it cannot. We probably won't be performing any actions on top of that building as it's an open building and it's the way it's designed and the sprinkler system, but no, we won't be able to reach the top of it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Now, Mr. Hardcastle, did you?
Yes. Clarify this building.
And then we'll come to Mr. Coker, okay?
You're not standing up 90 foot of a tilt-up concrete
Can you
panel.
pull
The front
down-
is aesthetic, and it's a metal building,
Mr.
right?
Hardcastle, could you pull the mic down? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That's right, it's not stand-up, not precast panels. I did want to point out a couple of things. As I've been working on the project, driving up and down Vietnam Veterans, I've been picturing, okay, where is this going to sit? There are trees right up next to the bypass. This building actually sits about 500 feet off of the lane, or about almost 1 2/3 football fields from the lane. It's 500 feet, and then it's 30 yards tall, so it's only 30 yards of a football field tall. So you will see Music City Studios, but what it's going to do is it's going to peer up above the trees. We will have a site plan that we actually are in the process of submitting y'all will be able to look at that. We can show perspectives of how that looks, so you can see how that fits and feels. But the most prominent thing you see up there is the TVA tower along when you drive up the bypass up at the top of the hill. We are very aware of that. We want to make this shine as something that's a positive for the city. And I think Tyler, and they've done a great job of trying to blend those materials and make that a really attractive use.
And the panels, the metal panels on these are gonna be architectural metal panels.
That's right.
Not a metal building panel.
And you see that on all kinds of, I'm not an architect, but when I thought of architectural panels, I thought of the Music City Center.
Right.
That's what I thought of. And it's got a huge architectural panel right up next to the architectural panels on the arena down there. So I just, it's used all the time. It's used very well if it's the right product. And I think that's the important thing, is this is the right product. And y'all will be able to see the details of that as we come through and present that to you at the site plan.
All right, Mr. Coker.
This may be an unanswerable question, but I'm going to ask anyway. We've kind of discussed here this is going to be kind of a focal point coming into the city's gateway, that sort of thing. And this is also a unique project as well. I mean, you're doing something that's not typically done. Fast forward 30 years, 50 years down the road, technology's made this campus obsolete, or it's no longer in use for what we're intended for today. What could you see this being retrofitted to accommodate? Is there something?
Well, let me say this, the use, as I understand it, and I'm the civil engineer, but the use, as I understand it, on the taller building is for rehearsals and things like that. I kind of hope we don't see a time like that when we're not doing rehearsals around Music City. So it's kind of hard to project that out, but for the other buildings, they're fairly normal height. I would expect that the entertainment industry will continue to thrive around Nashville, so that would be my speculation, but it's only speculation.
And we certainly hope so on that, but I was kind of looking for something if market changes, whatever the case.
These are
may be.
very solid, very sound buildings. We do them all over Middle Tennessee for different uses. Tiltup Concrete, even though I didn't want to speak to it, I wanted the architect, is a very good material if it's done well, and they have detailed that out. And we've actually seen that with the site plan. We actually have gone ahead and submitted the site plan to yesterday, because we want to go ahead and get that in, so staff has got plenty of time to look at it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coker. I don't see anybody else, any more lights, so I'll tell you what we're going to do. What we're going to do is, I would entertain a motion, we only need one vote here for this, that we would recommend this development plan to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for approval. And I would also entertain a motion that we would just allow for the variances that have been requested, with all staff comments. Does somebody like to make that motion? Mr. Hasty.
The uniqueness of this project, the location, being in an industrial park, I think it's going to be an asset to the city, and I'll make a motion that we approve it with the staff comments and grant all variances that were asked for.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it for the same reasons.
We have a second, and do we have any more discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Beery, call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
Yes.
Hardcastle,
Yes.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Silkwood,
Yes.
Stringfellow, and Jenkins.
Yes.
That's all 10.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we move on now to Near Water Place, and the first thing we're going to need to do is on the future land use and transportation plan, there's an amendment and from the character change area from suburban center to suburban living. And do we want to speak to this? Grant, if you'll speak to this for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be a fairly detailed report, as it is a preliminary plan development request, and it also includes the future land use and transportation amendment, like you stated, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
And this property is adjacent to 1090 West Main, which is the Waffle House property, and the exit 3 on exit 3 ramp to Tennessee 386. This land use. The land use request involves amending the land use to suburban living from the current suburban center classification, as well as that would match the current proposal for the planned development. And the Nearwater Place preliminary development plan request includes rezoning the site from general commercial plan development to multifamily residential plan development. The plan development request includes 49 townhome units on 6.13 acres, which yields a density of 8 units per acre. I think in our staff report here, the 15 got cut off, but the maximum allowable density is, I think, is 15 units per acre. So it is less than what the maximum allowable is for that at 8 units per acre. And this has 2.9 acres of open space that's proposed as part of this, which is 48% of the site, which the minimum requirement for MFRPD is 35% open space. So this exceeds that requirement based on what the engineers calculated. The open space for this includes a grilling area, a dog park as amenities. We had some discussions with the developer about this as well, just ensuring that there's plenty of amenities in that open space to bring forward for that consideration. And one of the things on the renderings, in terms of that, the required percentage of brick and stone is 50% in MFRPD for townhomes, and the renderings provided show 73 and 70%. Well, it's essentially a range of 73% to 51% based on the number of units for the townhomes. Like the 2-unit townhomes were about 73 and 70%, and then the 6-unit townhome building had 51% brick stone. So, which the remainder of that would be hardy, and so there's a range of that in the current proposal, which does meet that minimum requirement. The current general commercial plan development GCPD zoning was approved by ordinance 1998-41, and this approval would void and vacate that previous plan development, which would remove the currently approved automotive sales and office uses that were approved with that plan development. And instead of that, it would allow the maximum of 49 townhome units on the property, as proposed here, which would have increased design requirements as well as what was approved in 1998, because that had less design requirements at that time. And in terms of the land use change, this is the difference in the land use change. I think going back to that map there, if you look, the suburban center land use is what is currently on that property or signed to the property. If you look around at the adjacent properties, essentially that the suburban center is it's consistent with what a lot of the properties on Gallatin Road or the land use is assigned. This request would change that land use to suburban living, which would match the adjacent apartment complex to the east there, as well as the Mont Haven, the suburban living across the interchange there, which is I think Mont Haven apartments over there. So it would be consistent with that, so it wouldn't be that big of a change to do that. The zoning, if you look at the zoning map, this zoning is actually kind of mirrors the land use a little bit. The GCPD that's currently assigned to it would be changed to MFRPD with this request if it were approved, which again, it matches that, it would match the straight MFR zoning that is east of that with the apartments, and then also the MFRPD zoning over at the Mont Haven apartments. So it wouldn't be that big of a change on either one of those. It would still be consistent with adjacent land use. And I think that's pretty much it. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask on this.
I'll begin. Talk to us a little bit about how many, you put the slide up there, I believe, but how many homes will face the on-ramp, so to speak, to 386?
The actual on-ramp has I think that's the 6-plex unit, and then actually I think it's 2 6-plexes there. So that's what's actually on the ramp, but of course 386 is right there too, so it really is all along 386 and the ramp.
Well, that's what I was talking about. So of the materials that you mentioned where the homes were essentially 70%, where is that in proportion to on the frontage of 386 there, or going on to 386?
Sure, yeah, and the six townhome units there that are next to the ramp, those are the ones that have the 51% brick percentage, which the remainder would be hardy and probably vinyl and soffit materials and those type of things for minor materials, but essentially the main remainder of that would be hardy board, or be required to be hardy board. But the 4-unit townhomes, which there's quite a bit of those, that's the majority of those buildings, that would be the 70% and the 73% brick percentage.
But all the ratios are in compliance?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. All right, let's see, Ms. Longmire was next, I believe.
Yeah, come on. I wanted to know again, what is the total number of units that are being built?
49.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Green, could you talk us through how this site will be accessed? I read somewhere in one of the renderings that it's going to connect to the same driveway as Waffle House. Can you talk us through that access point, please?
Sure, and it's a unusual access point. The developer's proposing to access through that Waffle House property, and the developer is here. He may want to address the specifics of that access, but that's essentially what they've proposed.
Let's go ahead and ask him to come up. Since Ms. Silkwood's asked the question, she can ask directly to, Mr. Ely. If you introduce yourself and,
Sure, my name's Lynn Ely, and I reside at 250 Lake Valley Road here in Hendersonville. I can start with your question if you'd like, and
that'd be great.
Go from there. The access is unusual. I'll start by saying that my company is we typically develop residential neighborhoods. That's what I do for a living. Some of those single family, some townhomes similar to this. So we're always challenged with different things like access. Never had one quite this challenging. Coincidentally, this property has been in my family for about 20 years also. So we've struggled to figure out really what to do with it, and access has been a big part of that. So we came up with this idea after entertaining a lot of others through the years, a lot of others that we frankly didn't think were good for us or good for the city at large. So to combat the access, we thought a use for this property that would be appropriate is one that's more of a destinational use, one that isn't high traffic volume like a commercial use would be, or restaurant or car lot or any of those type things that where you've just got people coming and going all day. Having a residential use here would be the least impacted from a access or traffic standpoint, being that we're stuck with the access that we have. And what I mean by that is you've got the ramp that surrounds essentially 2/3 of this property that is restricted access. It's restricted by the state. So we cannot access the property anywhere else other than where we connect to the Waffle House property today. But that was designed with that intent. It's a full access on Gallatin Road. It does have an access easement, and the easement takes us to our property. One of the concerns we had, though, with regard to access specifically was just the general public that has gotten used to using that as a Waffle House parking lot. So to deal with that, we're proposing that this be a gated community that can only be, you can only come and go if you're a resident of the community. So all those things considered, we think that we've dealt with the access as best we can with what we've got handed to us.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. So walk me through how a resident would, excuse me, make a left turn onto 31E from your driveway, essentially.
So, and I know the plan doesn't do a good job showing it, but when you came out of the property, you would cross the frontage of Waffle House that is a 24-foot wide pavement, just the same width as a road. Then you would take a right to that short stub, and that is a full access onto Gallatin Road. So you could theoretically turn whichever way you want.
You mean come out at the stoplight? Is that what you're explaining?
No, you wouldn't have to. Now, you could, if you wanted to get to the light, which is frankly was probably what I would do, is to snake through, and there is easement through, but you could use the access that's there most nearby the property if you needed to.
Right, I think that would be difficult, though. I think the easier step would be to go to the light. I think that would be the natural progression for any
I
driver.
agree.
And the issue there is there's a large median that sticks out and sort of blocks the gas pumps, and essentially you'd be cutting through the gas station by the gas pumps to get to that light. So access is a major issue, I think, with this project. One thing, have you considered acquiring the vacant lot behind the gas station for better access?
We've tried for many years, and it's unattainable, just to put it simply. And it's not just a financial matter. It's caught in a legal matter where it can't be sold. So we've tried to actually assist that property owner with that for a number of years and been unable to. We are accommodating future access to it with the design of the project, but we have really no control beyond that for other people's property.
Right. I just, between the access issues and, the proximity to 386, being behind the restaurant, being next to light industrial, adjacent to light industrial, it's really, in my mind, not a desirable use for a residential area. So those are my major concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Silkwood. I think we'll go to Mr. Hasty, and then we'll go over to Mr. Peterson.
Did you say that there is a common access across the Exxon property? Access easement across there?
Yes, sir. All three of these properties have a shared access to where they're allowed to cross, but it's not, as Ms. Silkwood says, it's not really practical for someone to travel through a gas station parking lot. So the most practical thing for someone to do is to utilize the access that's on Gallatin Road.
Well, you're going to generate about 350 trips a day, and if I were the Exxon station, I wouldn't want you coming across in front of my pumps all day long.
Right.
And they're going to have a hard time getting out and turn left. But then if you got people coming in and people wanting to go across the Exxon station, you got a tremendous conflict point right there just off the highway.
Right.
That's going to be a real problem. But why did you use the access that was approved in the 1998 master plan?
This is the same access.
Not according to this plan here. It came out down below Waffle House. Look on page 2.
Is that where this is, Mr. Ely?
Yeah, I believe it's the same access. Now,
you're showing not using
I
that.
do see that it's drawn. I do see that it's drawn in a manner that could have it come directly to Gallatin Road. In theory, I guess we could do that. That would be an even harder access because you can see that the median comes into Gallatin Road. That even further restricts people traveling, taking that left turn. So this access and this easement grant the property an easier route.
I don't know. I think you got a real access problem personally.
We certainly do. And we've had it 20 years. We've owned the property 20 years. And I think we have limited the use to the least amount of trips possible for this property. If this is not something that I develop, it is something that will sell and probably follow through with the current zoning that it is, which will most likely be a commercial or a used car lot, just to be frank, and that's an entirely higher volume of traffic. So we were trying to propose something that we felt was more desirable by the public at large, based on the conditions that we have.
Well, this is just the land use plan amendment that we're voting on first, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Peterson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one question. Are these townhouses for sale or for rent?
So at the moment, we'd like to keep the option of both. It's been on the table that this thing could be managed as a rental, as a long-term lease property where we maintain the entire property and lease the units. But we know that just because of what we've proposed to build, the size of these units, the fact that many of them have two-car garages, they're going to be north of $400,000, probably over $500,000 for sale if we were to sell them. So we'd like the option to have both. So that's sort of the plan, is to either operate it as a long-term lease property or sell them and restrict rental to what we've done in the past on many neighborhoods in order not to have, if we were to go sell these to individuals, so to speak. The city's seen this just like every other city. We've seen it here in Hendersonville, just like you see it everywhere else, where people will just turn around and buy a lot of the houses and rent them just the same. So oftentimes what we will do is we'll self-impose deed restrictions to make sure that no one person can own a certain number of units. That sort of helps us alleviate that problem. But it's really better managed if you are going to allow leasing of units, you do it in its entirety. So that would be the way we would do it if we decide to lease any one unit. We would lease all 49.
And when will you make that decision?
It's tough because that's market driven, and the cost of housing is going up like, everybody knows it is. It's going through the roof. So it's really going to be driven by what our latest data has said, is that if we were to long-term lease these units, we're getting close to $3,000 a month. That is a unique person leasing in the market, frankly. It's going to be a young professional or an empty nester. Our market narrows down to a certain demographic. So we're struggling if we can be successful to operate it in that manner, or if we just need to put these things up for sale for the highest price we can get. But I don't know to say when. I would like to think that by the time we're submitting our final development plans for construction of these things, we'd have that answered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. And I would just like to follow up and say to commissioners, while this is great information for us with regard to leasing or owning, that it's not within our purview based on this submittal for this particular request to make that part of the discussion, part of the decision factor. We're really just on the use itself, and then we could often discuss this more when other parts come to us, but even at that, the commission, we don't have the kind of authority to mandate whether a developer leases or sells property. We don't have that kind of authority. Mr. Free, am I saying that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
And that's driven by federal law. That's
Federal law.
correct.
And I'll say, I don't mind speaking freely about it either. We've done it ourselves, and we know how to do it the right way. If it's done properly, it can be an asset to the community. If it's not, you guys have heard the horror stories, and we've seen them personally when it's done improperly. It's a burden to us all as residents. So.
Well, Mr. Peterson asked great questions here, and he always does, and so that's not the issue. We need to make that statement very clear. Mr. Coker.
believe Ms. Longmire.
Oh, Ms.
was
Longmire, I'm sorry, and then Mr. Coker.
That's okay.
My bad.
This is a point of information I'd like to know. Do you know the median strip that I believe Ms. Silkwood mentioned? Is there a way that you can apply to the state or to remove part of that in order to make a better entrance access to the property?
So possibly.
I
To
thought
be
that-
clear, because I was speaking about one median and I might have been talking about a different one than you were talking about. The one on Gallatin Road is not an issue. That one is cut short of the access. Gallatin Road, in front of that access, the median is not there. The median stops short towards Rivergate of that median. There is a median interior to the Waffle House property that we probably could do something about. And I'll just say that Timothy can probably help answer this, but if I'm not triggered to do a traffic study by regulation, I'll do it voluntarily so that we can get to the bottom of it. If it is a real issue, I know we've worked with the fire marshal and we've made sure that the plans recognize that a fire truck has good access from Gallatin Road into the property, around the property, and out the property. And that's actually a plan sheet in your set if you wanted to look at that. But we haven't studied it from a traffic generation standpoint, and I can voluntarily do that at the whenever stage. At the FMDP stage, I think is when I would normally do that, or FDP, I think is what it's called now. But we could do that to make sure that we're not creating some disaster.
Well, access is just so important, and especially at certain times of the day. Gallatin Road can be a nightmare.
Certainly. And if we're going to own and operate, long-term, which would be my desire, it's important to us too. Last thing we want is to, invest, north of $4 million in developing a pretty community like this and then find out we can't lease the things, so because we've got an access issue. So I appreciate the commentary and the talk about it. It's something we'd like to get to the bottom of also.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Longmire. Mr. Coker.
I appreciate your candor here tonight, just kind of speaking with us frankly. In that same vein, I have some serious concerns that I'm going to speak frankly to here as well. One, we talked about the traffic, the access. I'm not going to beat you up too badly because it's not going to change from two conversations ago on that. But I think you're going to have some safety issues, and there's no way around that. That concerns me greatly on that. Beyond that, though, I just simply do not like the idea of 49 residential units on 6 acres. Density is just much more than I'm comfortable with. I know our job here is not to do market analysis for you either, but as a consumer and somebody that's lived in this area, I think you'd be hard pressed to get $3,000 a month rent or sell these townhomes that are 51% brick for $500,000 behind a Waffle House and next to 2 apartment complexes and near an industrial area. I don't think that's reasonable. I just don't think that there's a market for it. But again, we're not here to do your market analysis on that. What we're here is what's best for Hendersonville. Immediately before you, we heard a presentation for a $100 million project that's coming in just less than a mile away from where you are. I think that if we let that kind of go through, I think there's going to be some opportunities that may come along as a result of an ancillary development of that may provide some use from this property that you have not had in the past 20 years. Bottom line, I don't like rezoning anything commercial right now to residential, and especially where this one's located. So I'm going to vote no, but I do appreciate you being here this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Coker. Okay, I don't see any other lights.
Hey.
Mr. Grant.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I do want to make a note on this. I've been looking at with this property's only access point being at this location, I would just encourage the commission to look at the land use as far as the basis for any approval or denial, as opposed to the specifically and primarily the access. Just given that it's very limited for that one parcel, so we probably want to look at the land use and the zoning as the major basis for the decision.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would concur. Is there another microphone, Mr. Hardwick?
this is really a question for staff. If we approve what he's asking tonight, and then he decides that, with all the issues with access going in and out here, it's just not gonna work. What is the step if somebody wants to come in and take it back commercial? Do we just go through this process again and rezone it back to commercial?
Director Free.
Yes, they would just have to go back through this process and then take it back to commercial. So it'd be the same process. If this was approved and then they find out, it's kind of like the existing plan development that's on there for I think it was actually a new auto dealership offices. That was years ago that was approved on there as a preliminary development plan, and it's still just sitting there. So this is replacing that. So if this stalled out at some point, if it was approved, then they want to do something commercial, and they just have to come back and go through that process. Yes, sir.
Okay, there's no other commissioners wishing to speak. Let me just say that what we're going to do here, and I think Mr. Green speaks correctly, what we're doing here tonight is on the amendment to the land use and transportation plan. We're actually bringing this piece of property into somewhat of a conformity that we see other areas of around that area in suburban living. So on that particular, and that's what he's saying here, is that we need to consider that particular use. Now, with it commercial, we've heard the commercial argument, and yeah, it would be great if we could find a commercial use that would do that. But even with a commercial use, especially retail or office or something like that, we still will have the same traffic constraints, maybe even more. And I will say, and I do agree, Mr. Ely, that this is not our call, but the access to this property is the killer. And I don't know how you get around the marketing side of that, even if we approve it for that land use. But, I can't legitimately sit here and say that 49 townhomes sitting right there is an adverse effect to what's around there, because we have so much other multifamily residential. And, we're talking about 49 units here. Now, once again, there was a density question brought up. Mr. Green, tell us, are they below on this acreage? Are they below what the standard would be?
Yes, sir. I think it was 8 units per acre, approximately 8 units per acre, where it's the MFRPD would allow up to 15 units per acre. So it is less than.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's substantially less than what's allowed there, right? I mean, if there were less units, it would be better, but you're still below, so it's a reasonable request. So here's what we're going to do. The first vote we're going to take here is it's an amendment to the future land use and transportation plan that simply changes this character from suburban center to suburban living. That's the first step we would take. And as Mr. Free said, if somebody came in after we made this change, and by the way, this is a step that the commission takes.
Yeah, just the commission.
This is not anything goes to the Board of Mayor and Alderman. This is just us. So if we make this step, it would simply be changing the land use plan to pave the way if we wanted to suggest this rezone. So, so I would, if anyone is up to it, I would entertain a motion that we make it an amendment to the future land use and transportation plan from suburban center to suburban living for this particular submittal. I'll entertain that motion. Ms. Stringfellow makes the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Hardwick seconds the motion. Any more discussion? Okay. Ms. Beery, call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
No.
Hardcastle,
Yes.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
No.
Longmire,
No.
Peterson,
Yes.
Silkwood,
No.
Stringfellow, and Jenkins.
Yes.
All right, that passes.
All right, what was the vote count, just to be clear?
6-0.
All
Or,
right.
I'm sorry, 6-4.
6 and 4, okay. All right, so we have changed the future land use and transportation plan. Now we're going to the project itself, and as I understand this, we're going from GC PD to an MFR PD. This will go forward to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and so we would need a motion to the effect that we recommend approval of Nearwater Place from a general commercial PD to a multifamily residential PD. Do I have that motion? With, on the findings of fact, would simply be that there, as far as adversely affecting property uses around it, does not do that. With the numbers of units, 49 units, while there are some concerns about traffic, it doesn't adversely affect that. And for those reasons, I think we could look at that particular rezone. Do we have a motion to kind of encapsulate that? We need a motion of some sort, somebody. Ms. Hardwick.
While I'm legitimately concerned about the traffic,
Yes, sir.
it's going to have the same concerns whether it's commercial or whether it's residential.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how you develop your land, period. I mean, that's what I do for a living, and you got a hard road ahead of you. While I'm generally not for multifamily, I think that's a good product at that location, and I would be, with the findings of fact that you mentioned, be willing to make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hardwick. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Altizer seconds the motion. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Beery, call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
No.
Hardcastle,
Yes.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
No.
Longmire,
No.
Peterson,
Yes.
Silkwood,
No.
Stringfellow, and Jenkins.
Yes.
All right, that passes 6-4.
Okay, so for the next steps, this will go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and they will take it through their normal processes for that particular rezone. Thank you very much. Now we move to site plans, Prime Car Wash, and Mr. Whitten, please.
Located at the corner of Bonita Parkway and East Main Street. The Planning Commission looked at this in the form of an FDP amendment back in August. So the layout you see there, the building elevations that you see in your packet are very consistent with what you saw in August. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, are there any major changes in what we saw in the last submittal?
No, sir.
Okay, so it's the same?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, any questions for Mr. Whitten? Hearing none, do we have a motion to accept this site plan with all staff comments?
Motion to approve with all staff comments.
We've got a motion,
Second.
second by Mr. Altizer. Any more discussion? Ms. Beery, call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
Yes.
Hardcastle,
Yes.
Hardwick, Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Silkwood,
Yes.
Stringfellow, and Jenkins.
Yes.
That's all 10.
Okay, thank you very much. We move on to the preliminary plats, Mansker Farms Phase 19 preliminary plat. Grant?
Thank you, sir. This is a preliminary plat for Phase 19, and essentially, their master plan for Mansker Farms was approved in '95. This is revised. This is based off a revised PDP, which was approved in 2016, and an FDP that was approved in 2017. The actual FDP that was approved had 330 lots. This preliminary plat proposal was changed in the layout slightly in order to address some topography issues out there. And they reduced the number of lots down to 319 from their entitlement from 330. In addition, this preliminary plat has fewer 48-foot lots than the FDP, and that was approved in 2017. And then it has actually 10 more 85-foot lots. So it's less dense, and it actually has more open space than the FDP approval. And so everything's substantially compliant with the FDP. And one other item I wanted to make sure that I noted was that we requested some renderings for this, since there's a new developer with Meritage on this property, and they submitted those, but we want to make sure that they did include those as part of the preliminary plat packet, but those are not going to be part of the approval, and we've made a note on that on the staff report that those renderings are not part of that approval. We are going to work with Meritage on that and get those in line with what was approved with the FDP and more of the spirit of what that approval called for. So we'll be in, with those renderings, they can be approved at any time. We just generally try to get those taken care of prior to once it goes to building permit, so that we can make those more expedient once those are submitted to us. So if they're approved on the front end, it's better for everybody. And but we're not going to approve what they've submitted currently. We'll be in talks with them on that.
Okay, so just to clarify, the plans they submitted for elevations were not what we needed. So we're going to go ahead and approve the use here in this plan, and they're going to work with staff. Now, will we see those elevations at any time? Possibly the final plat, maybe?
Yeah, we would be probably we would want them to have those finalized by then at that point. So, but what'll happen now is they'll submit construction plans if this is approved, and then once that's all, they'll have plenty of time to iron all that out with us during that time during the construction plan period.
I believe the commission would like to see those elevations at the appropriate time. Ms. Silkwood.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Green, just a quick question. So the architectural renderings in our packet were not what will be the final plan, but the question I have about that is, are you going to be addressing with the developer? I felt like looking through that packet, there were mostly front-facing garages. Are we going to try to work less of those in and have more side-facing garages, or what, is there
Yes, yes,
a
ma'am.
goal with that? Thank you.
The FDP had a limitation on that there was a number of side-facing garages that were required as part of the FDP, and they would be required to submit some of those elevations as well, just to ensure that they're aware that they're required to do that on some of these lots, and we would keep track of those, where those would be placed. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Silkwood. Mr. Free.
I'm sorry, I pushed the button. I might explain, it's a good opportunity, not just with this, but to explain on all the planned developments where it's approved, where the elevations are approved, then that, whatever the elevations are, we use that to determine when they're submitting the building permits. We use that to determine, hey, is that elevation, is that equal to or superior to what we approve? So we do that every day when permits are submitted. But like Mr. Green was sharing, with this was a new developer other than the developer that got the FDP approved. But as far as the staff is concerned, is that the spirit and the equality of what the elevation is on the final development plan, that's what it has to be, and that the developer has to work with staff to make sure it meets what we feel is equality to that. If not, then what we explain to them is you can go back to the Planning Commission and get that. So I just kind of wanted to share with that on all these planned developments, the elevations of what things look like. Once you're done with it, then the staff has those, and we're looking at those prior to issuing permits. So it's a substantial part of what we do. Sydney Simpson is here this evening, and she handles most of our single-family permits. And so all the homes out on Durham Farms and Millstone and other planned developments, we look very closely at those. I just thought I might explain that.
Thank you, Director Free. I see no other commissioners wishing to speak, so do we have a motion to accept this with all staff comments?
I'll move to accept with all staff comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Altizer. Do we have a second? second by Ms. Silkwood. Any more discussion? Ms. Beery, call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
Yes.
Hardcastle. I think he stepped away. Hardwick. Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire. Peterson. Silkwood,
Yes.
Stringfellow. And Jenkins.
Yes.
All right, that's 9 and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you. Passes. Next, we just moved to the Free Hill Business Park Phase 2 Music City Studios. This is just a preliminary plat. They've agreed with all staff comments, and we just need a motion to accept. So moved by Mr. Peterson, second by Ms. Stringfellow. All right, any more discussion? Ms. Beery, call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
Yes.
Hardcastle.
Yes.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire,
Yes.
Peterson. Silkwood,
Yes.
Stringfellow. And Jenkins.
Yes.
That's all 10.
Okay, we're moving now to the rezonings, and I know that, I know we've got 2 or 3 here we got to do on this to kind of get everything right, but during the hearing phase, there were some concerns that I feel like it would be appropriate just to take a moment before we vote on these to iron out. And so is somebody here from Durham? Oh, hey, Billy, good to see you. Yeah, okay. Why don't you come on up here, and we've got the homeowners board here. And, I feel like that some of this, we're going to be making some decisions here, but I think it'd be wise if we could just go ahead and, I'm going to let Director Free speak to this first, and then we'll let Billy speak to this as well. Okay?
Yeah, what this is the area that you can see that's kind of outlined in red. That's just a little bit less than 7 acres. What's really interesting about this is all of this was approved in the development plan, the final development plan, and all of the previous plans for Durham Farms was actually approved, but that little piece that was outlined in red, that less than 7 acres, even though the road went up through there and everything, it actually was never in the city limits. It was never within our zoning, and it was actually not even within our urban growth boundary. So last year, it took a while under COVID, but last year we worked with the state to extend our urban growth boundary to be able to then now get to the point of which we are now, which is just to kind of clean this up and annex what we've already planned as a part of this development. One thing I might note is that there's nothing in any of the previous plans where there's anything there, any uses. It's just open space. And then also, just to double make sure, we had them put notes on there that it made it very clear that they can't do anything as far as uses or put stuff on there unless they come back and go through that proper process. So there wouldn't be any way to kind of slip something in there. There are some topography issues, but probably that could possibly be overcome in the future with retaining walls and things like that possibly. But if anything happened in the future, it would have to come back. There'd be public notice involved in that, and the adjacent property owners and the homeowners association of the neighborhood that's north of that would be notified. So I just kind of wanted to make you aware of that. It's an odd thing that it wasn't annexed when all of the rest of it was annexed. It possibly could have happened because it actually wasn't located within the city's urban growth boundary,
Which is probably what happened.
yeah. So that's kind of where we are, where we are at today with it. And then currently, and the developer can speak to it, currently they're moving forward in constructing that road. And then we have requested that the developer request annexation, and we've actually tied this to, I think, the backside, and you can see it down below where the estate villas are. It's on the left side, the lots that are over there. We've tied the final approval of that to get this cleaned up. And the reason that I did that is that I just wanted to make sure as a staff, we wanted to make sure that the road got put through, and that it was tied to something. So That's kind of why we're here today. Looking at it also, because it wasn't in our planning region and it wasn't in our urban growth boundary, it actually wasn't, there was no future land use. And so that's one of the things that we're doing tonight, is just the little yellow area is extending that into the hashed area, where that this is, for future land use, it's mixed-use neighborhood as well. So that kind of explains what's going on from the staff side, Chairman.
Thank you, Director Free. The homeowner association bill had some specific issues, and I'm going to turn to Vice Chairman Silkwood, and maybe she can ask some questions about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, kind of following up on some of the concerns that the HOA board and residents had. Some of their concerns, obviously, is just the growth and, what would that process look like if you all were to try to develop that, whether it would be residential, commercial, and, talk us through, and maybe Keith Free is better to talk about that process of how there would be a notice and there would be a meeting and how all of that kind of flows through. Just to, I think, allay some fears that if, there would be suddenly a surprise construction project out there. So if that makes sense.
I think so. Maybe to rest assure some of the concerns that they had, which I completely understand why they're asking the questions. This plan, kind of going back to what Keith was saying a second ago, the history of this project started in 2007 when it was first approved by this board. That was done by a different developer than us. And let me back up. So I probably should state my name first, right? I'm sorry. I could see Keith was kind of squirming a little bit there. He's trying to figure out if I was doing this correctly. My name is Bill Charles. I'm the president of Land Management Group, and I act as a consultant for the developers of this project, which is a company called Freehold, and they are out of Boston. And so I'm here tonight to answer any questions about this annexation. So I hope I've kind of checked that box.
You did.
Thank you. So going back to the questions, Ms. Silkwood, some of the things that have come up in the history, when this plan was originally approved back in 2007, the previous developer was required as part of his condition of approval to follow through with the major thoroughfare plan, which is what it was called back then. In fact, earlier tonight I was trying to figure out what FLUTP stood for. I finally figured it out. It's a major thoroughfare plan is what was required back then to connect all the way from Long Hollow Pike through to Drake's.
What does the acronym stand for, just so we're on the same page?
Future Land Use and Transportation Plan.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a major thoroughfare plan. So back then it was major thoroughfare plan. So we made this connection. It was made or required as part of the development. Now that was about an $18 to $20 million expense to the development to make that road connection. I'm sorry, I should be talking in the microphone. According to the major thoroughfare plan. So what we're asking here tonight is moving forward from 2007 and fulfilling the commitment that we've made to everybody to make sure that that connection is made. We're simply asking for this last 6 or 7 acres to be annexed into the city. To date, we already have a final plat that's been approved that you guys approved back in July of this year that shows that road connection to Long Hollow Pike. We already have a approved set of construction drawings to build that roadway to Long Hollow Pike. The reason why things kind of flip-flopped a little bit, to Keith's point, the state of Tennessee needed to get involved to give the city of Hendersonville rights to be able to annex that piece of property. And so there was this long delay back and forth where the city asked us to make the annexation instead of just doing it through the county. And so we said that makes a lot of sense. And so we've been juggling all of that over the last probably year and a half now. I think, Keith, is when we first started this process of getting it through the state and getting it to this place here. As far as the concern that the residents have that live across the street in Saddlebrook, right?
Somerset Downs.
Somerset Downs. we have no intentions of adding residential lots into this section 36. So I think, or commercial. Unless anybody wants to give us commercial, we'd certainly consider, but as it stands right now, we're not asking for any commercial.
And 36 is defined by that red circle that's up there right there.
It's a little bit more than that. If you took 36, it would actually take you all the way down to that first intersection within our development. So it's a little bit bigger than that.
So where the lots are, where your first entrance is, it's the lots coming down
Yeah.
south to the left-hand side, going that way?
Yeah, but section 36 is only the boulevard road. It's what we call the spine road. It's just the main road that makes the connection to Long Hollow Pike.
So you're saying no apartment buildings or condos?
No, we have no plans for apartments, condos, or a super Walmart. I could probably stay here all night and list out the gamut. What we're proposing tonight is to build this roadway, and the balance of the land around it would be open space. So that may solve all the questions. Is there any, I know you guys had other, was there anything else that I'm missing?
That was the major concern, is
Okay.
what was going to come at the mouth of that entrance that was undefined there, because we were not clear on exactly what mixed-use neighborhood was.
Well, I didn't understand that either, but I think the reason why the mixed use is being asked is because that's a continuation of our existing zoning. That's the reason why. But on the plat that Keith Free in the planning office has reviewed, it says open space, if I'm right.
That's correct.
I'm right on that, Keith.
That's
It says
correct.
open space around it.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
All right, okay, we've got a little, I've given a little latitude here.
I'm sorry.
I think that Mr. Charles is trying to answer the questions, and I hope, if there's any other concerns, I'll you guys can just get together. But I did want to take this opportunity to alleviate some of your concerns. Mr. Free, did you have a comment?
Yeah, let me kind of, and I think it might, so if you can go back, yeah, we can't. you can't
No
do
more
that.
questions.
If you can go back to, yeah, well, that's fine. Yeah, that's good. Go back one more, right there. So everything you see there and everything that's white, that's all open space. Where those lots are that you see, that's where there's going to be homes that are going to be built there. There's nothing else built in that white area. If they were going to build any, you can name
Have to
everything.
come here.
Anything other than just being open space, then they'd have to come back here and go through a public process. And so at this point, I mean, Mr. Charles has expressed there's nothing they have any plan to do. If Mr. Charles or anybody else has, it's not just limited to Mr. Charles or freehold development. Anybody else 8 years from now wants to do something, they've got to go back, because what this is we have planned development, and so those images of what you're seeing right there, that really locks them in to what that is. Some of the other things that you heard tonight with Music City and then that Nearwater project, where you kind of saw how that was laid out, if that ends up getting approved, the planned development gets approved, they're pretty locked in to what that is. They can't come in and do something radically different and put apartments up, and it has to be something that's very close to what that is. In this particular case, it's very clear that white area, it's open space. There's no residential, commercial, or anything. But if somebody, just like any place else in the city or in the county for that matter, if somebody wanted to do something where there was open space, or it wasn't even a planned development, and it wasn't zoned for that, then they'd have to come back through some public process. And that would be in the city or in the county, is what that would be. But doing this then brings it fully under the city. And so then anything anybody wants to do in the future, they have to go through the city process.
Right.
Then basically this development that is in the city, then it wouldn't be the county making a decision in the future as to what happens there. It would be the city. And as you can probably see from this evening and the interaction from our very educated planning commissioners, they take all this very seriously. And when a plan development is approved, it's just not willy-nilly, oh, okay, now you can do this. Everything's very specific and very precise. And that's not limited to this date and time. That's something going
Everything.
years into the future. It will still be that way. It won't change.
And
Thank you very,
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Free. Mr. Hardwick, do you have any questions?
I do. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Free.
Okay.
So the plat is going to be recorded as that being open space. However, we're changing the zoning to allow for this,
Mixed use
a
neighborhood.
mixed use. And does that give them rights and entitlements to that land that if they wanted to come back and change the plat, we couldn't say no because it's entitled for that in the future?
Yeah, no, if they wanted to change anything and change that open space, it would come back before you guys, and actually, depending on what it was, it actually may actually end up going all the way back to BOMA as well. So,
So-
yeah, it'd be a whole process. They couldn't, and this, remember, this isn't straight zoning, so this
Understand.
isn't multifamily or single-family residential. It isn't that, it's a planned development. It's a MXC PD, so it's a planned development, so it's specific to the plan. It could be, there's all kinds of uses that you might be able to do in MXC, but all those uses aren't allowed in Durham Farms, even though it's in MXC PD. Only the uses that are listed on there, and only in the locations specifically laid out as to
Okay.
where they can
So
be. Yeah.
I just wanted to feel comfortable because I know these folks that we're not giving the land an entitlement that another developer could come back to at a future date and say, well, this zoning says I can do this and I want to change the PUD
No,
to do that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know any other way to,
All right,
no.
no, I understand. I understand.
Yeah,
I
so
just,
there
I
isn't
know when
anything.
you create an
Yeah.
entitlement,
Yes,
you gotta honor it.
Yeah.
But we're not giving them a new entitlement
No.
other than what this plat says.
that's right.
Okay.
And
I'm good with that.
and the development plan for this has already been approved years ago. And so
Mr.
this is
Coker.
reflecting what that is.
Mr. Coker.
Thank you.
This is just a question right here. It's not really even our purview, but we've addressed a lot of things homeowners had concerns with. So I just wanted, they mentioned this during comments. So I just wanted to ask the question so you could address them. Connection to Long Hollow Pike, it's going to have a stop sign there, traffic light. What is the plan on that?
All of that has been worked out with the city, and it's going to have a stop sign, and it'll have some improvements to Long Hollow Pike that include some extended turn lanes, both a left in and a right, if I remember right, Keith. Jubal, do you want to, that's, our engineer's sitting in the audience, so I
Sarah,
just
why
want to
don't
make
you-
sure I'm.
Why don't you address that?
So through discussions, their approved plan shows a stop sign, but the city actually has plans to install a temporary traffic signal until such a time as we can prioritize through budget a full traffic signal. But there will be a temporary traffic signal installed in coordination with that connection. We've been working with TDOT on that already, and our on-call traffic engineer has done a preliminary warrant with those projected volumes when that connection will be made.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I see no other, by the way, thank you, Mr. Charles, for answering the questions. And so now, what we're going to do is the first vote we're going to be taking tonight, it's a resolution serving as a report to the Board Mayor and Alderman for the proposed plan of services for the proposed annexation of 6.93 acres located on Longview Drive, south side of Long Hollow Pike, Hendersonville, Sumner County, Tennessee. So what we're doing is a motion to accept the proposed plan of services for annexation. Need such a motion. Go ahead.
I'll make the motion for the annexation.
Thank you very much. Plan of services with, okay, they agree with all staff comments.
Yes, they have to agree with all staff comments and the plans of services.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Stringfellow. Any other comments? Ms. Beery, call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
Yes.
Hardcastle,
Yes.
Hardwick, Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire, Peterson,
Yes.
Silkwood,
Yes.
Stringfellow, and Jenkins.
Yes.
All right, that's all 10.
Okay, the next vote we'll be taking now is for the future land use and transportation plan amendment. This will change, the character area change to mixed-use neighborhood, and so we need a motion to change this use to mixed-use neighborhood. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
It's moved by Ms. Silkwood. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Hasty. All right, do we have any more questions? Ms. Beery, call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
Yes.
Hardcastle,
Yes.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire, Peterson, Silkwood,
Yes.
Stringfellow, and Jenkins.
Yes.
That's all 10.
Okay, the next vote we'll take is actually the recommendation for approval for the rezone from MXRPD to MXR, from county to MXRPD rather. And that with the findings of fact. Does anybody want to speak to the findings of fact on this one? Mr. Hasty, you want to speak to this for us?
I'll make a motion that we approve. Have comments?
Okay.
I mean, finding of facts for rezoning, just, it's just good planning.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
All right, here we go. There's no adverse effect to traffic. The request and the character, it's within the character of the surrounding area, and the zoning amendment is in agreement with the land use plan and all staff comments and good planning.
Thank you very much. It's a great motion. Do I have a second?
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Ms. Silkwood. Okay, do we have any more questions? All right, Ms. Beery, call the roll. This was the rezone recommendation.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
Yes.
Hardcastle,
Yes.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire, Peterson,
Yes.
Silkwood,
Yes.
Stringfellow, and Jenkins.
Yes.
That's all 10.
Okay, the next one is a resolution serving as a report to the Board Mayor and Alderman about the proposed plan of services for the .89 acres located at 1200 Avondale. Do we have a motion to accept the plan of services for that particular submittal?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Silkwood. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Altizer. Any more questions? Ms. Beery, call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
Yes.
Hardcastle,
Yes.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Silkwood,
Yes.
Stringfellow, Jenkins.
Yes.
That's all 10.
Okay, and now the next one is the J&J Properties, Tennessee at 1200 Avondale. Sydney, I'm going to go ahead and let you speak to this one real quick. I think the gentleman's gone, but there's a little history here we need to talk about. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So way back when, prior to 2020, in July of 2020, there was such a thing called the Sumner County Planning Region, which was in the county, but it had the zoning and the regulations of the city. And so this property actually came through in the winter of 2017 and was approved for a rezoning from our residential SR1 zoning to heavy commercial at that time. So they went through this whole rezoning process. And then in July of last year, the county took back the zoning of all the county properties in that planning region. And during that process, this was then zoned back to residential. So now the owners are asking to go back through our gauntlet process to rezone it to what they had with the city, which is heavy commercial. So they are now going back through this process with us to get that rezoning to retain the rezoning they had through the city. And it is contiguous with other properties in the city. The properties directly north across the street are industrial zoned. So it's not out of character for that area.
The salient point is that this property was once zoned by us, heavy commercial. So it's just, I asked the question, why do we have to go back and do this again? But because of the county and city explained that very well. So I wanted you to know that. Do we have a motion to rezone? Is this recommended board member? Recommend board member with findings of fact is simply the fact that there's no adverse on the particular area of that particular area, the traffic. that it was zoned HC before, and so it's pretty easy.
I will make the motion that we will accept it with the findings of fact to revert it back to the zoning that it had previously. What else do I need to say?
That's
Is there
it.
anything else? All right.
That's a slam dunk.
There
right
you go.
Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Longmire. Okay, any more questions? All right, Ms. Beery, call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker,
Yes.
Hardcastle,
Yes.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire, Peterson,
Yes.
Silkwood,
Yes.
Stringfellow, and Jenkins.
Yes.
That's all 10.
With the commission's approval, I'm just going to trust that we can all read the staff level projects that are approved and that are pending. That'll save us a little bit of time. Let's move on now to the last page. We have the resolution recommending the acceptance and the dedication of completed streets in Stone Ridge Phases 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Silkwood, second by Mr. Peterson, who incidentally is the sponsor of this resolution, so there we go. And hearing no questions, go ahead and call the roll.
Altizer,
Yes.
Coker, Hardcastle,
Yes.
Hardwick,
Yes.
Hasty,
Yes.
Longmire, Peterson, Silkwood,
Yes.
Stringfellow, and Jenkins.
Yes.
That's all 10.
All right, thank you very much. Planning Director comments, Mr. Free.
I have a few things this evening. The first thing is to remind everybody about the TAPA training. There's a 4-hour requirement for planning commissioners and Board of Zoning Appeals members to complete each year. And that's going to be Friday, November the 5th, 8 to noon. That is going to be online. You should get something here in the next day or two. If you don't, let Lauren know. So that is going to be occurring then and be able to knock out that planning requirement. Also, we talked about the planning region on the Avondale and we've talked about it previously, but I'm looking to bring a resolution before the Planning Commission at the December meeting to dissolve the planning region and revert back to just a municipal planning department. All the other cities in Sumner County have either already done it or in the process to do it now. We've talked about it before, but we're actually now getting into some things where that conflict is fixing to start to happen, the confusion, and staff feels very strongly that we do need to move and consider that, and consider removing that. That process would be something where this body would hopefully approve a resolution, then it would go to BOMA, and then BOMA would have to approve a resolution as well to start that process. It would still be somewhat of a lengthy process because it has to go to the state for approval, and they only meet about 4 times a year, so it wouldn't happen automatically, but it would at least get us started down that road. Also, and we'll get you more information about that sometime this month, but I'm planning on having a work session in January, at that third Tuesday in January, on the changes to the zoning ordinance. This is going to be just mostly little cleanups from that major change that we did. We've been collecting little things that need to be adjusted. So we're going to be looking and projecting to do a work session in January on that. Sometime after that, we'll have a work session, probably a month or two after that, on our proposed changes to our subdivision regulations. That's major changes that we've been working on. Additionally, we're continuing to work with our consultant on the West Main Street Old Town plan and the redevelopment plan for that area. There is, I think we've sent it, but just to let people know that might be listening, you can go to the city website and you can access a survey that's being done to get input from citizens on that. I think we're maybe close to 200 so far, but it'd be great to have more folks address what their vision and their thoughts are about West Main Street and Old Town and how we progress right there. We're continuing to work with all of our other the county and all of our other municipal partners in Sumner County on our Greenbelt Bike Walkway Plan. The consultants are moving forward with that, and what that's going to do is a plan that will fully connect our sidewalk, bikeway and trail system throughout the whole county and throughout each city. So that's a pretty bold plan that we're going to have, and hopefully maybe in the spring there'll be finalization on that. Also, one thing that we need to probably talk about here at some point, I think we've talked about it a couple of times, is looking at what things that the Planning Commission would like the staff to review that wouldn't necessarily come before the Planning Commission unless we just couldn't work it out with applicants. We're entering a new level of volume of things, as you can see this evening. The December meeting will certainly eclipse this meeting on the complexity and the level of submissions. We don't see an end, maybe in the spring, but we don't see an end to that. So I think one of the things we've discussed before is, was there things that the planning staff could take on to approve that really wouldn't come before the Planning Commission if there were no waivers and it met everything. And that's something we can discuss when we have that January work session on the changes to the zoning ordinance. We can discuss that then and talk a little bit more about that. And that is everything that I have this evening.
Thank you very much. Chair would note that we have successfully cleared the room. Ms. Stringfellow, we still have one. Well, almost successfully cleared. We're batting 1,000 here. We're doing good. All right, Ms. Stringfellow, you got a motion to adjourn? Do we have a second? Oh, let's go.